Wish by Michael Tolkien. Narrated by Michael Tolkien and Gerald Dickens.
Preface. The source and inspiration for this narrative poem is a prose fantasy intended for children. The Rose-Coloured Wish by Florence Bone, 1875–1971, illustrated by Kate Holmes and published by Hutchinson in 1923. My mother's copy was part of a collection of my parents' books read to us in young childhood in the late 1940s and early 1950s. I inherited the well-used battered book, and 20 years later my own children asked for repeated readings from it. I later realized that this apparently conventional fairy story combines adventure, humor, and moving character conflicts within a gently imposed moral structure, which feels both inevitable and surprising. 30 years on, a series of holidays in alpine venues, reminiscent of the book's setting, may have prompted me to pay tribute to its story and qualities, not critically or by republication, but creatively, though for several years I had no idea how. First, I became curious about the book's present status, and could find no second-hand copies advertised, and no comments on this particular work. But it became apparent from the many other works of Florence Bone, mostly pre-World War II, available through internet sources, and cited in British Library records, that she wrote a wide variety of children's fiction, including historical novels, and was a biographer and writer of well-researched documentaries. And yet she is not mentioned in authoritative reference books and critical essays on 20th century children's literature. Whether or not there's irrefutable wisdom in such eclipses, I am not trying to reinstate a lost author, but to bring to life the substance of one forgotten story. In hindsight, I realize I have tried to do so by methods similar to those used by earlier, less literal translators of ancient or medieval literature, to recreate the spirit of the original in new dress. I have retained the narrative structure and the essence of the characters, along with their conflicts and developments. These are an intimate part of the moral framework with which I identify, and to which I have been faithful. However, nearly all the names of characters and places are my own. The dialogue and descriptions have parallels in the source, but seldom repeated verbatim. Not change for its own sake, but because, in line with the intention of expressing inspiration, I have been true to my own style and allowed my imagination to respond to and, in some cases, to expand on the original. I trust this makes for interior consistency, avoiding apparent dependence on a source or a sense of being second-hand or patched up. Some readers may wonder about the choice of verse as a storytelling medium and question whether it works or has any advantages. There are some simple practical reasons. Verse has long been my chief discipline and mode of expression, and through it I felt more confident about creating a relatively sharp, economical, and fast-moving dialogue and narrative. It would also help me to emphasize changes of pace and intense feeling, and to slacken tension where humor or mundane comments prevail. So, after a lot of experimenting, I found a compromise between formality and common rhythms of speech and storytelling, and I hope the main body of the tale is in a verse form sufficiently unobtrusive and unmannered for readers either to be unaware of it or to feel its strategies working positively. In contrast to this plain style, and often highlighted by particular fonts, I have used distinct kinds of verse to characterize the more ethereal figures, such as the robin and various flowers and insects that communicate with the children. Generally, persons and creatures who have commerce with humans of all ages speak at a normal pace in the common verse framework. Such distinctions are not derived from my source, nor are the verse prefaces to each chapter. These are in a deliberately formal, alliterating, and authoritative style. Some might call it stilted. They are meant to feel like fragments of an older historically angled narrative poem, placing some of the persons, places, and events into a broader perspective, of which the chief characters are only dimly aware. I wanted to suggest a commonly held belief that all tales, however well known and established, or apparently fantastic, are limited interpretations of a series of events in human history. Florence Bone herself reminded me
Sample complete. Ready to continue?